Across the US, a quiet medical revolution is taking place. In kitchens and bathrooms, people are literally taking their health into their own hands by injecting themselves with peptides.
I'm not being paid to post about these. Like, I genuinely am obsessed.
I have the same concerns everyone else has in that they're not tested very well, right? It's all basically based on mice and rat data.
Peptides might be the only supplement where people talk like they're ordering from a McDonald's menu. I'll take the weight loss one, the injury healing one, the tendon repair one, something to make me live until I'm 150. If you scroll through TikTok or YouTube right now, peptides sound like a cheat code. Instant fat loss, pain-free joints, perfect skin. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Only a tiny fraction of these claims have solid human, placebo-controlled clinical trial data behind them that's actually reliable. So in this video, I'm going to explain peptides in plain language, sort the popular ones into categories such as the weight loss, tissue recovery, skin, beauty, longevity, etc., and tell you which ones actually have reliable data studies that are done in humans and which ones are basically very unreliable still in today's market. And yes, we are going to talk about the influencers like Andrew Huberman and the peptide craze on social media. However, we're going to do it on this channel without the hype. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Amy, and on this platform, we break down complicated and overwhelming medical topics into simple and understandable videos so you can make better informed decisions about your own health. Quick disclaimer, the videos I publish here are strictly for educational purposes only. If you have a medical concern, always talk to your physician in person. Let's dive into today's topic, peptides. I guess we should start by explaining what peptides actually are first, really quickly. So, peptides are a short chain of amino acids held together by bonds. So, think of your body like a giant office building, and peptides are basically these short emails that the staff send each other so that you have a very well functioning business or building or whatever it is that you're running. So, these short messages can come in the form of, for example, turn on fat burning, repair this tissue, start an inflammatory process here, make more of this hormone, such as insulin or growth hormone, etc. And amino acids are basically tiny pieces of the building blocks of proteins. So imagine every cell has a lock on its surface, such as, for example, a receptor. Each peptide has a specific key that's cut in a very specific shape in order to fit on this surface lock, so the receptors. And when the right key fits in the right lock, the cell reads that message and changes what it's doing. So, for instance, secretes more insulin, new growth of collagen tissue, reduces appetite, and so on and so forth. Some important nuances here are some peptides are approved drugs with a big clinical trial programs behind them backing their safety, such as, for instance, insulin, or nowadays even we're seeing the new emerging data on the GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide and so on. Other peptides that are actually being hyped on social media right now, they're being sold under the claim that they're only for research purposes, especially those in the biohacking space, because the data on humans is very limited or in some cases non-existent. So the bottom line is not all peptides are created equal. Some belong in the hospitals that doctors prescribe to patients. Some belong in a very well-conducted clinical trial setting where they should be continuously studied to see if they do have an effect in the human body. And some probably belong off of social media in your Instagram, YouTube, TikTok feed, if you ask me. So let's discuss a little bit before we go into details about why they blew up so much. If you've noticed lately that peptides are everywhere, you're not imagining it. So the marketing is very advanced, I would say, in my humble opinion, especially for something that's being sold at this massive level nowadays. And so if you are probably struggling with a specific issue in your life, such as maybe you want to lose weight, fat loss, maybe you are aging and you would like to have better skin, so you'd like to have an anti-aging thing, maybe you like to increase your performance if you're into working out or if you're an athlete. And these peptides are being sold under the pretense that it could basically miraculously improve all of these things all at once. So let's divide the peptides into different categories. I would like to start with probably the most famous one, which is the weight loss or the metabolic. And this is actually where the strongest evidence is. So things like GLP-1 related agonists, such as semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, these are the celebrity peptides, right? Behind brand names like Ozempic. But the whole concept of a GLP-1 agonist is, think of it as a smart temperature regulator in your living room for your metabolism. So your metabolism might be the temperature in your living room, and GLP-1s are like a smart app regulator for the temperature. So they work by doing things like making you feel faster, so increasing satiety, keeping blood sugar more stable throughout the day, and also reduce the impulse to, I don't know, raid your kitchen at 1 a.m., right? However, of all the peptide groups right now that are emerging on the social media world, the GLP-1 do have the most strongest evidence. They have multiple randomized placebo-controlled trials that are very significant for doctors because those are the ones that are the most reliable. There's even some extremely large trials coming out now with around 3,000 to 60,000 participants for GLP-1 agonists, and also show how it also reduces cardiovascular events. And all of this causes a lowering of mortality risk in some populations. So if you're interested in weight loss and you're in the peptide craze field and trying to figure out which one is for you, probably it will be the GLP-1 agonist, unless you, of course, don't have any other conditions that are contraindicated for the use of GLP-1, such as thyroid problems, pancreatic problems, low blood sugar to begin with, etc. And also, if you're of a normal BMI, normal weight, and you're not severely overweight, I don't think you should be on GLP-1s regardless. And most of the other fat burning peptides sold online, the human data are very tiny or sometimes even non existent. And it focuses on very specific endpoints. And I wouldn't particularly call them reliable, efficient. In my opinion, at this point, it would just be a waste of your own money. Now let's talk about peptide for tissue recovery and injury. And this is actually where the social media hype really starts to outpace the human data. People talk about some of these like they're injectable physiotherapy that work instantly. And some of the popular names you'll be hearing probably on social media are things like BPC 157, TB 500, so thymosin beta 4 fragments, growth hormone secretagogues like CJC 1295, ipamorelin, samorelin, and so on. But here's the evidence of the current data on BPC 157, for instance, which is probably the most famous one right now. There are lots of animal data for tendon and gut, but human placebo-controlled studies are very limited. Regulators have even flagged safety of these peptides. They're also sold under the disclaimer that they're for research purposes and not specifically for human consumption. Another one you'll be hearing about is probably TB 500. This is still in the early phase of human trials. It's being considered for a lot of heart tissue damage, so cardiac myocyte damage. But again, the review and the studies are not very robust, still sparse, still very little on humans. Other very famous peptides for tissue and wound repair are growth hormone secretagogues. It tells you in the name, a secretagogue is something in the body that promotes the secretion of a specific hormone, peptide, or protein. And growth hormone are basically hormones or peptides, actually, who are secreted when you need to grow a specific tissue. And some early human studies do exist on growth hormone secretagogues because we've actually been using them in medicine for a while now, especially for some congenital conditions such as dwarfism or people who don't undergo specific physiological changes in a given time. They could be given growth hormone, especially in children. But many of them have never been actually studied for the reason of tissue repair or the reason of wound healing. So the efficacy on that is slightly more unreliable. Hormone peptides is like hitting the growth pedal on the body. The problem is that they don't distinguish well between repair this specific muscle or this specific torn tendon. And oh, well, now all of a sudden your heart is growing as well. And now all of a sudden there's a tumor over here. And that's why active cancer is often considered a very, very strong contraindication for growth hormone secretagogues, because again, they don't distinguish between exactly what you want them to grow and what you want them not to grow. For soft tissue injuries, standard care, load management, so working out in a more ergonomic way, sometimes surgery still has better and robust outcome than today's healing peptide data that we have. So if someone offers you a peptide that heals everything, remember that duct tape also fixes a lot of things, but you probably don't want to use it inside artery or bloodstream, do you? So now let's jump into probably something that the ladies and some men would actually be very interested in, the skin, beauty, and glow peptide craze. And in this category, what I've seen being promoted are things like collagen peptides, copper peptides, like this molecule called JHK copper, cosmetic signal peptides in some topical skin products. Think of your skin as a mattress, right? And over time, the mattress loses its springs and its bounciness. And that's basically the same analogy that you can use on your skin. Over time, the skin loses collagen and elastin fibers, which means that the skin is more flat, more loose, tends to be stretched out. That's where people have more wrinkles. And some peptides are like messages telling your skin to produce more collagen, more elastin, and repair those small tears to keep the skin more intact, glowing, and looking plump. Now, all of this sounds like a miraculous discovery and very tempting. I agree. I would like to have a peptide that does all of these things at once. But let's be realistic and talk about the actual human evidence and the medical safety behind it. There are some meta-analysis of some studies done of oral and topical peptides for skin aging, and they've found some modest improvements in hydration elasticity and wrinkle depth, but not significant enough to make a huge difference in the placebo patients. On top of that, many trials are very short. They're only done in a couple of weeks, to maximum a few months, with limited sample size, meaning limited people have participated in these studies. And often the industries doing these studies and funding these studies are obviously biased slightly. So the quality of the result varies a little bit. So once you find a peptide that you're interested in, especially for skin, beauty related, please always make sure if there's any affiliations with the studies done, if any big pharmaceutical companies or any big cosmetological companies are funding these studies, and so on and so forth. But you guys are smart. I don't need to tell you this. There are some topical products used in some products that have small human studies and improve wound healing and skin appearance. But again, the sample sizes were small. The trial length was small. Some of it is being backed and overhyped, called a miracle. So I would take a lot of it with a grain of salt. But if you're interested in these peptides, of course, obviously make sure it comes from a reliable source. Talk to a dermatologist, preferably before you start putting it on your skin. And now let's talk about another very famous and exploding group of peptides, the longevity and anti-aging peptides. And this has to be probably one of the most seductive categories nowadays, especially with people wanting to live longer, be healthier, look better, and so on and so forth. And these peptides usually are marketed for a longer lifespan, like I said, sharper cognition, better sleep, a youthful physiology, and so on and so forth. Some of the popular names that you'll come across these peptides of the longevity world are things like epitolon, mitochondria targeted peptides, so things like SS31, neuropeptides like CEMAX, CELANC, and other various peptides appearing on different types of longevity stacks and discussions online. But here's the evidence and the reality. Many of the strongest data for longevity peptides come, unfortunately, still from animal models. So mice were observed during these studies and seem to have had an extended lifespan. They've also had improved markers of mitochondrial function, and the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, as everybody says, but it also has a very close connection to aging, as well as it seems also to improve circadian rhythm in mice. Again, in mice, not humans. The research usually focuses on the intermediate outcomes like metabolic markers, cognitive tests, sleep qualities, and so on and so forth. The bottom line is we lack long-term, large-scale human trials that show that taking a peptide for years safely extends lifespan or health span. GLP-1s that I mentioned earlier, the fat loss agonists, they seem to overlap with some of the longevity peptides and are reliable compared to some of the other peptides for longevity because they do also improve cardiometabolic and mortality benefits. So they improve lifespan and increase lifespan by reducing cardiovascular events. So no, they're not going to help you live until 120, but they might reduce your risks of getting heart failure or heart attack. So This is another topic that I'd like to cover in today's video is what influencers often skip, which is the safety, the regulation. The minority of peptides are fully approved drugs with clear dosing, indications, and safety monitoring. Think of insulin or GLP-1 agonists. Many of the boutique peptides are still not approved by major regulators, and they may even sit on the do not compound list because human safety and efficacy data are incomplete. And a classical example of this is BPC 157, which is why it is still sold under the disclaimer that it's for research purposes only. Growth signaling peptides are particularly tricky because anything that tells a tissue to grow can potentially tell the wrong tissue to grow. So this could indirectly promote cancerous tissues to grow faster, or tissues of the body that you don't want growing to grow, such as the heart tissue, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys, and so on and so forth. So those are another group of peptides that probably need to be watched for. Another thing that a lot of influencers don't mention is allergic reactions. There have been people who have injected these peptides from questionable distributors and who have had severe allergic reactions. And so it is a big risk you're taking once you're ordering these things online and injecting them into your body. I personally think it's too big of a risk to do at this point. But if you've decided that this is something that you really want to look into and you've already made up your mind, this is how I would critically approach which peptide to use, how to think about it, and how to basically rid the peptides that work from the peptides that don't work, or from the peptides that could be potentially life-threatening or dangerous for you. The first question I would ask is there at least one well-designed, human, placebo-controlled, randomized control study, or RCT, for a specific effect being claimed by a peptide that's being sold on this market? Has it been replicated in more than one study or population? What do the regulators say, such as the FDA, the EMA, etc.? Is it approved? Is it not approved? Is it still under revision? What's the safety profile of it, and how many years has it been studied for? Nowadays, there are several evidence grading frameworks that exist to categorize peptides by human data trial. So in the trials, you see things like strong, moderate, emerging, or preliminary, rather than marketing them by hype. And so these are things that I would look at. So if research has strong evidence, or moderate, or emerging, or preliminary, based off of that, you can kind of get an idea about the safety profile of this drug. And some of the practical takeaways, again, are for weight loss or cardiometabolic diseases, GLP-1s seem to be the most safest, or other similar drugs, GLP-1 agonists. They have clear guidelines, they have dosaging, and they're medications that could be prescribed by your doctor as well. For injury recovery, most of the popular healing peptides are still under the testing phase or the preclinical phase. I personally, if I had a wound to heal or a tissue to repair, I would go through the regular healthcare route, meaning physiotherapy, ergonomic training, and even visiting a surgeon if that's necessary. For skin and beauty and collagen, the data is still very modest. It's helpful, but it's not magical, and it's not something that you will see huge results over from the studies that I've seen and the results that have been published by researchers that didn't have any kind of affiliation, of course, with the companies that were funding these studies. For longevity, nearly everything marketed as anti-aging peptide relies more on animal data than long-term human RCTs. So they should also be approached with a grain of salt. And always discuss any peptide therapy with a qualified clinician who can see your full medical picture, including cancer risk, endocrine status, and medication list, to avoid any kind of unrepairable or life-threatening side effects. You can do your own research, go on PubMed, NIH, look at different studies done by Mayo Clinic, Harvard University of Chicago. There's so many online websites and research institutes that you should rely on more than some influencer on social media. So yeah, if you found this interesting, let me know in the comments down below what you found interesting. Have you considered using any peptides? Is it something that you one day would like for it to be mainstream? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.